I think we can go ahead and get started. We have a limited amount of time today. We've got a couple recipes to make. Welcome everyone to our Museum Worker Wellbeing Series food program. This is called Afternoon Snack and Chat with Mattie the Cook. And it's featuring Mattie, a historical character from the Glessner House in Chicago. We're excited you could join us for today's program. My name is Charity Counts, and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Midwest Museums. I'm glad you could be here with us today, joining from Michigan or wherever else you're joining us from, Wisconsin and everywhere. I wanted to highlight a couple housekeeping items before we begin our program. First, why we decided to do a food program. When we talked about what would make sense for a well-being series, we got to thinking about all the things we love to do as Midwesterners, and a lot of things revolve around food. So Sarah Lincoln from Mutual of America actually suggested we try to do a food program. And so we thought it'd be really fun to feature a program that a museum does. And so that's why we're here enjoying Glessner House program. I wanted to highlight that we have an ASL interpreter with us today. You see her on the screen right now. She'll remain pinned on the screen throughout the program, along with the video feed from Glessner House's kitchen. I did want to make a note that this program is in Zoom meeting because we want to be open to you all asking questions and conversing with Mattie throughout the program. I just ask that for the benefit of the interpreter and others who would be listening or watching later, that maybe you announce yourself before you start asking your questions. So say, hi, I'm Charity Counts. I have a question for Mattie, or can you hold on, Mattie? I'm trying to catch up on making this. Can you repeat that one more time? So feel free to speak up, participate as you wish, but make sure you announce yourselves. You're also welcome to use the chat to comment and exchange and ask questions. If a question comes up and you don't want to voice it, we can voice it for you. I have also turned on Zoom's built-in transcription feature. If you want to use it and it's not on, you can turn it on at the bottom of your screen by clicking more. And I think it's just like view live transcript, but you can turn it on from your Zoom menu. I think that's about it for logistics here. There is a set program and you'll get to interact with Mattie. There will be an opportunity at the end of Mattie's program to ask Ellie, the actress who's portraying Mattie, questions. So save your contemporary questions, your modern questions for Ellie. Mattie's only going to be able to answer things that are from her time and about what she's making today. Okay, with that, I want to introduce Sarah from Mutual of America, who's, wonderful support is, what we have to thank for making this series happen. We're really grateful to Mutual of America and your support for, Midwest museums, but also just museum people and caring about how we're all doing and helping to make all these great programs happening. So Sarah, you want to say a few words to our group today?
Thank you, Charity. Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Winkin from Mutual of America, joining you from my own kitchen here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Probably hear my dog click-clacking around, as happens when you are working from home in an afternoon. But I am just so excited about today's session, especially, and just to have the opportunity to partner with AMM on delivering this afternoon snack and chat. Just a quick little background about who we are and why we have partnered with AMM. Before we get started, we sound like we're an insurance company, but we are not. We're created in 1945 and actually founded by the Community Chest, which some of you may have heard of if you have ever played Monopoly. You've seen the Community Chest. And we were founded to provide retirement service to nonprofit organizations. So back in the 1940s, those individuals were not able to benefit from Social Security. So there was a real need to create funding to help those individuals save for retirement properly. That organization, Community Chest, went on to become the United Way. We still predominantly work with nonprofit agencies. We've about 90% of who we work with still to this day is nonprofit organizations. So in talking to Charity, we've got a lot of museum clients already, and we just felt it made sense for us to partner and try to help bring additional programming to you and just be a resource for anybody who has questions at all about their retirement program that they're offering at the museum. So with that, thanks Charity for the introduction and the opportunity to be here today. I'd like to turn it over to Bill Tyre, who is the Executive Director and Curator at the Glessner House in Chicago. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Tyre. I am the Executive Director and Curator here at Glessner House. If you have not visited here previously, we are located in the South Loop neighborhood of Chicago and are a National Historic Landmark. We have an 1887 house that we interpret the architecture, the family, the decorative arts, and the many, many people that lived here through the years, including both the family and all of their living staff. We were honored to be the recipient of the 2020 Silver Lining Award from AMN due to our pandemic pivot. And as many of you probably experienced, it really opened our eyes to many new ways to do what we do. A few years ago, we decided to really start expanding the stories of the people who lived and worked in this house and the living staff of 8. And we started by focusing on Mattie Williamson, who was the Glessner's beloved cook. She was here for 20 years, starting in 1892. And fortunately, due to Mrs. Glessner's meticulous record keeping, we were able to really reconstruct Mattie's story and her life. So we are delighted this afternoon to be able to introduce you to Mattie Williamson.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry, I don't have anything ready right now. See my list? It's a very busy day, but I do have lots of things for the staff today. We're not going to sit down and have a formal meal together like we usually do because it's such a busy day. I hope you'll forgive me. There's some soup on the stove, and if you will go and get yourself a bowl, you can come back out and I'll serve you some. And then I'm making some cheese spread, and I've got a loaf of my bread that just came out of the oven a few minutes ago, so I'll slice some of that up for you, and you can have a cheese sandwich with some soup. And then if you're feeling like you want a little something sweet, I do have some cake. And in a few minutes, I'm going to sort through these berries and all the ones that aren't perfectly matched that we want to serve to the guests. I'll chop those up, put a little sugar on them, and the staff can have those. So we won't let anybody on the staff go hungry today. See my list? Paderewski, the great pianist, is coming to dinner tonight with Mr. and Mrs. Glessner, and I think a total of 11 people. And as if that weren't enough, we're doing this big menu for that. And then the conductor for the Chicago Symphony, he's coming after his other concert that he's doing at the Apollo Club. And at about 11 o'clock, we're going to have another whole dinner. Now, if all goes well, you're going to be helping me. Some of you are going to be helping me get all the dishes done in the meantime between those two meals. And guess what we're going to be having for our supper tonight? Right, yes, bean soup and cheese sandwiches and the cake and the ugly strawberries. So be patient with me. I promise the next time the Glessners are out for the evening, we'll have a really special meal for the staff. So tonight we're having, Mrs. Glessner's not starting with oysters, oddly enough. She almost always does. But tonight she's starting with caviar. Now I already got the caviar, it was delivered, but I've got to get the crackers and then I've got to chop up some onions. So we'll be doing that in a bit. I made the cream soup yesterday. The fish will go in at 7, the chicken will go in at 5. The peas and the eggplant, we're gonna do those on top of the stove. We have a lovely gas range here. Oh, you haven't cooked on a gas range before? Oh, well. It's quite different and much, much cleaner. Mrs. Glessner is very proud of her gas range. Then we're going to have asparagus, and I've got the white sauce ingredients here. We're probably going to stir that up in a minute. So let's get this cheese done. Now, this is such a simple dish. Everybody should be able to just throw this together in no time at all. We're going to take some grated cheese. I already grated it. This is just a nice cheddar. And then some Philadelphia cream cheese, which is just a wonderful, wonderful product. We can use it for all sorts of things. And we'll mix those up together. And then the traveling spice merchant came the other day. And he had some packets of very, very nice Hungarian paprika. See, let's see, it's right here. I've got my celery seed. He had all of the things I needed. This spice merchant came to the door. I had not traded with him before, but he was very good. He came highly recommended by one of our grocers. And he came right to the door and he said that he had Hungarian paprika. And Mrs. Glessner likes me to sprinkle that on the top. See, this one is already done and you can see. See that, how pretty that is? And it is the best paprika I think I have ever seen. I hope he comes again. I asked him please to call on me the next time he is in Chicago. Now, you must be very careful with traveling spice merchants, as I'm sure you know, because some of them have rather rakish reputations. And a girl can't be too careful when dealing with a spice merchant, but this fellow seemed very, very nice. Now I've got this stirred up pretty well. We're going to put the juice of 1 lemon in it. Get that ready to go. And be sure you don't get any of the seeds in it. That wouldn't do it all. Because with all this grated cheese, it would be hard to see the seeds. So you want to be very, very careful. And the lemon just adds a very nice touch. Now, if you can't get lemons, you can use a vinegar. If you have some vinegar, that would work fine. But the lemon just adds a really nice touch. Of course, this is the Glessner House, so we always have oranges. Mr. Glessner does not sit down at table without an orange, ever. So, to tell you the truth, don't tell Mrs. Glessner. I have been known to be out of lemons a time or two, and I've used orange juice and nobody noticed. So I think it's all right. Then I'm going to put some of this. He has the nicest little packets, this spice merchant. I really do like them. Put, a good small handful. That might be a teaspoon. Put that in there, the white pepper. And then the celery seed. Now, do not use celery salt. Use celery seed. I met a cook one time. She thought they were the same thing. She put celery salt in instead of celery seed. And then she also salted the dish. It was so salty that nobody could eat it. It was just embarrassing. I felt so badly for her. So you never want to make that mistake. So when this is all beautifully stirred up, then for us, for the staff, I'm just going to leave it in this bowl and you can dish it out yourself. But if I were going to put this on a tray for Mr. and Mrs. Glessner, or this is a very good picnic dish, if they're having a picnic, Glessners like to have a picnic. This is a very good picnic dish because see, you can put it up in a little crockery dish like this one, see? You can put it up, put the Hungarian paprika on the top of it, wrap it up with a little bit of waxed paper, like that, put it in your picnic basket, and it will stay nice and solid because the cream cheese will not melt. It'll just get nice and soft, and that'll be all ready to go. Now that this is ready to go, I'm going to set it over here.
Mattie, I have a question.
Yes.
Is it okay that I roll mine in a ball?
Oh, certainly. That's an excellent idea. You could absolutely roll it in a ball. When you roll it in a ball, I would be a little bit scant about my cream cheese. Instead of the ratio being 1-to-1 for your cream cheese and your grated cheddar cheese, I would make it maybe a third cream cheese instead of a half, something like that, and then roll it. And then if you wanted to be very, very fancy, you could roll it in some cracker crumbs or even some crushed nuts if you like. And that would be very nice. And again, that is a very good picnic dish.
Thank you.
Now here we have the brown bread. Now in a lot of houses, I mean, even in Chicago, in a lot of houses, you will not see brown bread at the table for the family. But Mrs. Glessner is very, very fond of brown bread, and so is Mr. Glessner. And so we don't make brown bread in this house just for the servants and the staff. We make it for everybody. Well, this just came out of the oven this morning. Nope, I don't want that one. I want this one. Now, Mrs. Glessner is very, very fond of telling people that I once won an award for this bread. And I'm sure that I can't take all the credit. I think that probably some of the other entries just weren't up to snuff, but Mrs. Glessner is very proud of it, and she puts brown bread and butter on nearly every menu. Now, what you're going to do, dear, is you're just going to take this nice piece of bread, and I'm going to hand it to you, and you're going to put some of the cheese on the bread, and then go get yourself a bowl, as I said, and we'll get you some soup, and then we'll see what else we can scare up for you, because I really have to get busy on getting that white sauce made. So here you go. Now, I've got about 4 of these, and we'll have plenty for the staff and also for the dinner. Now, I had a little bit of an accident when I was peeling the tomatoes, and this one split right down the side. Well, the staff eats the ugly ones, as you know. Would you like some tomato salad? I could fix one up real quick for you. Okay, here we are. Well, here's your ugly tomato. Look at this beautiful celery I got. This is white celery from Kalamazoo. They grow it in a hothouse in Kalamazoo. Isn't it incredible? Here, I'm gonna go ahead and this. I'm gonna save this for the strawberries. So a little bit of celery, a little bit of mayonnaise, and it's too early for any of the things in the kitchen garden. Normally in the summertime, I'd have chives, of course, but we don't have them right now. So what I did was I had some dried chives, and I soaked them in just a little bit of white wine. Frederick, the butler, gave me just a little bit of white wine in a bowl, and I soaked the chives so they plump up quite nicely. There. Now you can have a little salad with your cheese too, and don't tell anybody I gave you the ugly tomato. It won't matter. Now, we better get this. Oh, I have a cake in the oven. I forgot. in tiny little slices. So we'll cut this cake in tiny little slices, and then we'll give you some strawberries to go on it, all right? How about that? Let me pick through these. See, Mrs. Glessner is going to want these strawberries whole, but with the stems off, of course, and with just a little bit of sugar on them because she's also having me serve ice cream. She loves to have cake and ice cream. It's her favorite sort of dessert. You will almost always see that at our table. Now, this is a very nice one. Those in here. This one's got a little bruise. That's going to be for the staff. We're not going to serve that to the guests. So, stop here. He escaped. Oh, see this one, it's beautiful, but it's way too big. It's so much bigger than all the other strawberries. So that won't do. We want to have them matching, of course, in size. So I will cut this one up. And let's put a little bit of sugar on top. There we go. Now I'll tell you a trick. If you go get a saucer from the pantry and put the saucer on top of it and shake this up real vigorously, it'll bruise the strawberries for you and they'll make their own syrup with the sugar. Put that right on top of the cake. You will just think that you're in the fanciest place in the world when you do it that way. Now I think we're going to need some more cakes. We're going to start making another cake. Now we just did a very simple 1, 2, 3, 4 cake. There. And this is a very simple cake, but it's a good quality pound cake, and you can do anything with it. You can slice it and put jam or fruit or a compote or anything in between the layers. You can dollop with cream over it. Tonight, as I mentioned, we're serving it with ice cream. But it's 1, 2, 3, 4 because it's 1 cup of butter and 2 cups of sugar and 3 cups of flour and 4 eggs. And it should actually be called a 1, 2, 4, 3 cake because you have to put the flour in last, but it's not quite as catchy. So here's the butter. And it's probably about a cup. Now we'll be well behaved and measure the sugar, even though I really don't need to. We'll pretend that I always measure the sugar. We'll pretend that we have new people in the house and they don't realize that I don't need to measure the sugar. Well, you think that's funny too? I'll bet you that I could put a bunch of sugar in a bowl and you could come along after me and measure it, and I bet it would be almost exactly what I intended it to be. So now you're going to stir this up vigorously until it's all combined. Very, very vigorously. And then you're going to put in your eggs, and I've already cracked my eggs, so I'll pour those in when I get it done, when I get it stirred up enough. I have to check soup, cheese, bread, salad, cake, berries. See, this is the staff's list, and this is what we're serving to Mr. Thomas at about 11 o'clock tonight. Now, some of this is already done. I'm going to boil a ham after the dinner service for the large group is finished. Then I will boil the ham. And he likes to eat the ham cold and the roast beef warm. and the salmon cold. So the salmon's already done. I did that the other day when I baked the bread. I got the salmon all ready to go. So that was fine. Does anybody have a question? Do you have a question?
Well, Mattie, somebody was just asking about your stove.
Oh, well, yes. Now, Mrs. Glessner always intended to have a gas range in this house. And it's really, this stove and I go together. We're a team. Because if it weren't for this stove, I probably wouldn't have my post. And if it weren't for me, this stove might not have survived being in this house. Because what happened was Mrs. Glessner was very enamored with the new technology of the gas range, but all of the cooks that she had before me couldn't cook on it. And they kept quitting and getting upset and having ruined dinner parties and heaven knows what else. And so when Mrs. Glessner hired me, she sent me off to a course. She said, Mattie, I'm going to send you to a course. You're going to learn how to use this stove. Here's my eggs. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to learn how to use this stove, Mattie, and then we will have all of these meals in this clean kitchen, and you won't have to have a coal box, and you won't have to have all the smoke and everything else. And so I got to stay because I learned how to use the stove. It was all because of the stove. Now, if you look up a recipe, I will tell you, any of you who ever think you might be a cook in a big house someday, if you look up a recipe for 1, 2, 3, 4 cake, it won't say anything about vanilla. But I just cannot abide trying to make a cake that doesn't have vanilla in it. It just seems wrong. It just seems wrong, and I don't think it's right. So if you want to say it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cake, you could say 1 cup of butter, 2 cups of sugar, 3 cups of flour, 4 eggs, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 glugs of vanilla. So it's really a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What was the measurement you used for the vanilla? Was it a glove?
Pardon me?
What was the measurement on the vanilla?
5 gloves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Gloves. Okay. Lexi asked, what if it was?
Of course. I made it up.
Lexi asked, what is the most difficult ingredient for you to acquire?
Oh, well, we're in Chicago, so we can get everything. Oh, there isn't anything we can't get. For instance, that tomato, now that's a hothouse tomato, and it came from near us, but this cucumber here, now this cucumber came in on a train from a state that's warm enough to have cucumbers already by now. And the celery comes from the celery capital of the country, Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is only about, how long does it take? I would say it probably takes about 6 hours on the train. Well, the celery doesn't have time to spoil and it's only on the train for about 6 hours. And so it's perfectly fresh and wonderful. And we can get, any number of things. Of course, the meat in Chicago is absolutely the finest quality that you will ever find. And of course, we have the lake right there, so there's lots of fish that come in. And then the fish comes in on the train as well. You know, I'm always at the fishmongers getting various things because Mrs. Glessner keeps a very healthful diet, and you know that fish is very, very healthful. So we certainly would, have a lot of fish.
Well, and how often do you have to buy groceries for the Glessners?
Pardon me?
How often do you have to purchase groceries for the Glessner house?
Well, we're purchasing something just about every day because the goods come from different places. So I mentioned that we had the traveling spice merchant that came by. That was one thing. And we have groceries that are delivered to the door. The ice cream, if I don't make it myself, it also gets delivered in a refrigerated wagon with, you know, ice in the wagon so that it doesn't melt. And it's really very helpful to me to do it that way, I assure you. We are constantly buying various things. Sometimes I will go down in person to the Water Street Market and I'll pick up the things that I need. Sometimes when it's something like strawberries or apples or eggplants, which is one of the things I'm serving tonight, I want to actually see them with my own eyes and feel them and pinch them and know if they're the very best quality. And sometimes I'll come back from the market and Mrs. Glessner has given me an instruction that she wants eggplants, and I'll come back from the market and I'll say, Mrs. Glessner, the eggplants just weren't any good today. And so would it be all right if we had asparagus instead, or Brussels sprouts, or something that looked better? And see, that's the advantage of going right to the market on your own. Because if you don't do that, then what can happen is that the grocery man will deliver something, you're all planning to make that, and then all of a sudden you can't make it because you don't have the right ingredient. So certain things I'm very particular about, and I would want to go and physically see it myself with my own eyes. But the rest of the things we can have delivered. Here's my cake pans. See, this cake batter came up. See? Can you see that? It came up very nicely. And of course, you want to put a little butter inside your pan, because you don't want your cake to stick coming out, because then you have to take the cake crumbs and turn them into something else. Because of course we can't have any waste. We certainly have to always find various ideas. Like for instance, I will make some very weak lemonade out of those lemon skins, of course. So this one recipe of the cake will fill about 2 of these little round pans. And these are nice because when you cut it in about 6 slices, it makes a beautiful little triangle and it sits right on the plate, and then there's plenty of room for the ice cream to go right next to it with the strawberries on top. Whereas if you have a big 8-inch cake pan, which is more standard, you would probably not be able to get it all on one plate quite as nicely. And Mrs. Glessner wants her food to taste good, and also she wants it to look good for the guests. That's very important to her. She's a very artistic and creative person. And so the aesthetics of how things look are very significant to Mrs. Glessner and to some of her guests. You would never, ever say that Mrs. Glessner does not set an attractive table. And it's part of my job to make sure that she's able to do that at every meal that we have guests for. Now, if we had any small boys in this house, this would be the time for somebody to come and volunteer to clean the bowl for the cook so that they can eat the leavings of what was still inside.
Mattie, I was wondering how many staff are there at Glessner?
Well, right now there's 7 of us, but sometimes there's 8. It just depends. And sometimes Mrs. Glessner, if we're having a very, very big party with, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people, if it's just the dining room, the largest group is 18. And usually they're about 12, 14, something like that. But if we have lots and lots of people, sometimes Mrs. Glessner will hire some extra waiters. And she'll hire waiters sometimes from some of the restaurants, the nicer restaurants, where the waiters are properly trained. And woe betide if some agency sends improperly trained staff for an event here, because Mrs. Glessner will write a strongly worded letter that she was not satisfied with the service that she got, and she won't hire men from that agency again. Sometimes we will have some of the staff from some of the other houses on Prairie Avenue, if it's a big party or we're doing something very special, and they will come and help me. But for the most part, it's just me and the ladies' maids and Mrs. Glessner's maid and the men and the coachman and the butler, Frederick. And that's us. And usually it's not as busy as it is today. And we all do sit down at table together for breakfast before the family's breakfast, for a heavier meal after the family's luncheon, and then a lighter meal in the evening before or after the family's dinner, depending on how many things are on my chalkboard for that particular day.
Mattie, how big would the event have to be for you to have an assistant to help prepare the food?
Oh, probably about 25 or 30 people, I would think. That would be big enough. See, we have quite a large dining room, and any time that all of the guests would fit into the dining room, then that would be a time when it would just be our staff, the Glessner House staff. But the house is designed for entertaining. Mrs. Glessner made it that way on purpose. And so when she has a very large party, we have, sometimes we have things in chafing dishes and things on buffet tables, and they'll be in several different rooms in the house. And then we will hire and bring in extra tables and set the tables in some of the rooms. There's a large area at the top of the stairs on the second floor that will fit 5 or 6 tables for people to sit down. And then there's another area on the main floor where people can sit down if we bring in extra tables and chairs. And so we can have a lot of people in this house, but then it's not so much that they're being served plated food. That would be more likely things in chafing dishes. And Mrs. Glessner will sometimes do those herself. I'll get everything prepared for her and have all of the various ingredients out, and then she'll stir up the dish in the chafing dish. And that's a very nice thing. It's a very gracious thing for the hostess to be able to do. And she likes to do that. I'm going to set this bowl down here. Now, I'm going to finish going through some of these strawberries. And I want to set the ones for the dinner aside. The idea is we want as matching as we can possibly get them. This one's just a little bit too big, I think. Now see, they should not only be uniform in size, they should also be uniform in color. Because this one, you'll see, not quite as ripe as the other ones are, and so that one is not going to make the grade. Now this is a beautiful strawberry, but it's too long. These other ones are all a smaller size. So Mrs. Glessner would want all of these to match. So it'll be a nice treat for the staff because we'll have lots of strawberries to put on our cake later. See, again, this is a beautiful strawberry. Now see what I would do with this one. See these two long ones right here? They're almost exactly the same size. So what I would do is and we only have 2 in this bowl that are like that. So what I would do is I would set those aside, and then tomorrow for Mr. and Mrs. Glessner's breakfast, I would do something creative with those strawberries, maybe slice them and fan them out and leave the stem on and put those on their breakfast tray so they have something extra special nice. Because we did have those 2 strawberries that were a little bit longer, but they're not ugly, they're just not uniform.
It sure sounds like you have to be creative in the kitchen often.
Oh, yes, I think we do. I think we do. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Mrs. Glessner keeps me around, because Mrs. Glessner is very creative with all of the things that she does. And so having someone who cooks the food for her and her guests, who's also very creative, is probably quite a boon to her and her sensibilities. And I think that if she were a different sort of hostess, then maybe I wouldn't be as well suited to her as I am. But I think that because she's creative and I like to think that I am too, then we're able to work very well together. Now let me get this other cake. There we go. Now this is the vanilla sugar, and you can buy vanilla sugar in packets from a spice merchant, but I'll tell you a secret. It's really easy to make yourself. And I'm just going to sprinkle some of this vanilla sugar on top of this cake that I baked earlier. This is my vanilla sugar jar, and I just keep filling it up over and over and over again. I take sugar, just regular sugar that you would bake with, and then I take a vanilla bean pod. Now this one is all dusted with sugar. Normally they're blackish. And you slice the pod all the way down the center, and when you open the pod up with your fingers, there's this lovely gooey substance that's almost the consistency of strawberry jam inside. You scrape that out with a dull knife and mix that in with your sugar. And then just to add a little bit of extra vanilla-ness, you go ahead and pop those empty shells of the pod on in there. Then you shake it up and you put the lid on and you wait. And after about 2 or 3 days, the sugar is flavored with that lovely vanilla essence. And it's so delightful. You can make a lovely ladies' tea sandwich with white bread cut in beautiful shapes, a little bit of butter, and a sprinkle of vanilla sugar, and the ladies will rave. They just love it. It is so delicious and so beautiful, and it's the easiest thing. And if you buy it in a little packet, it's quite dear. It's very, very expensive. But if you make it yourself, you will save your employer money, and you will have all of these creative things that you can do with your vanilla sugar. Like sprinkle it on top of your cake. Well, I think that it is about time for me to get food for all of you, and you can take that opportunity to ask me any questions. And those of you who are still going to be here for the evening service for the guests this evening, I'd like you to be aware. Now, I'm going to be putting the chicken in the oven at 5, as I mentioned, and from 5 until 7, I do not want anybody coming into this kitchen. So eat what you want to eat now, and then after we started the service for the guests, if you are not one of the people that is serving tonight, you can certainly come in and nab something. I'll certainly give you some of the pieces of the roast chicken that aren't the prettier parts, the end of the roast beef when it's ready, things like that. There'll be plenty to eat tonight, but I just do need the kitchen to myself for those couple of hours, because I will have something on every single surface of my stove, and in both ovens, and in the warming oven, and over there, and there will be lots going on. So I would appreciate it if you would just sort of hold back on coming to get your evening meal until after that has taken place, if you wouldn't mind too much. So, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Mattie. We really enjoyed making I'm going to just show everybody that around the table here, my cheese spread I did roll into a ball, sprinkled paprika on the top. I'm eating mine with crackers though. I don't know if anybody else wants to share what they made.
Mine looks very similar to yours.
Oh yeah.
A ball with some crackers.
Delicious.
Embarrassed to admit that I forgot to buy ingredients. The traveling merchant didn't make it, but I'm making lasagna instead.
That's okay.
That is not something Mrs. Glessner has ever asked me to make.
Oh, really? No lasagna, huh?
No, I've heard of it. It's Italian, isn't it? Doesn't it have some macaroni in it of some sort?
I was actually going to ask that. Do you make pasta? Is that not a dish that you make frequently?
Oh, yes, we do make macaroni. Oh, yes, we do. And there's quite a few dishes. Mrs. Glessner likes it with cheese, of course, which is the standard way that people make it. And she likes a spaghetti with, spaghetti is the long, thin macaroni, not the kind that is shorter with the holes in it, but the long, thin kind. She likes that with a tomato sauce. Sometimes she will put that as a side dish, not as a main course, of course, but as a side dish with other things. She often serves it with a chicken as the entree with the spaghetti macaroni and tomato sauce on top. That will show up on the menus from time to time. Is there anyone else?
I'm not seeing other questions come in for Mattie, but I didn't know if we could switch gears a little bit and ask if anybody has any questions for Glessner House or for Ellie today.
Do you want to come up? Hi, I'm Ellie. Jennifer Van Haften, I can't believe you're here. Oh, it's so great. I was telling Bill earlier that you write the best Christmas newsletters of anyone I've ever known in my life. I was so thrilled to see that you were signed up for this. And I know that Sarah Phelan is on here too. I heard that you were here. And also Heather Biak, my dear, dear friends, both of you, all of you. So thank you for coming and being so supportive. And if you threw rotten tomatoes, they didn't hit me because I'm on Zoom.
Well, I want to know.
Bill, the greatest museum director in the whole wide world.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to mention how the idea of Mattie came about, which I alluded to a little bit earlier on. But Ellie had been with us for quite a while, doing various programs and helping with us. And so I approached her about the idea of creating the character of Mattie. And she was very excited for the opportunity because, of course, she is a culinary historian and has a wonderful, wonderful track record of working with historic recipes and really bringing to life those recipes of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So we had put together an event, which was on March 12th of 2020. And we were really sweating it out the last couple of days because, of course, everybody knows what was happening in March of 2020. But our wonderful dinner took place. Mattie prepared an 8-course meal using Mrs. Glessner's actual menus. And so people were treated to everything from oysters on the half shell to venison to the tomato salad and many other things. And it was a wonderful event. And then, of course, we immediately shut down to the public for the next several months. But we wanted to keep Mattie alive and in front of people. So one of the things that Mattie has done is that she produces a monthly column for us that is on our website. If you go there, you will see the Cooking with Mattie column. And each month is a different theme. This month was about an Easter party for the Glessner grandchildren.
And last month was noodles.
It was noodles.
Last month was noodles.
Yes.
So you only have to go back 1 month to get the noodles recipes.
Yeah, so that's it. And that came about by mistake because she said she was noodling around in the kitchen and I said, oh, you're going to talk about noodles. And she said, oh, actually, that's a great idea.
It was a great idea.
Yeah, so I encourage you to check out that column because not only does she do the recipes, which are terrific, and I get to be the recipient of everything she cooks as she prepares the column, so I appreciate that. But she also introduces a lot of very interesting food history, why people were using certain foods at a time, foods that were not available, how things would have been prepared. So you really get a sense of broader food history of the period. So that's really interesting. And the other thing that we have done that again started back in 2020 is we have started a servants tour. And Mattie, of course, is an important part of that. She's not always here in person, but we're able to talk about her. And it's a 2-hour exploration of the house from the perspective of the staff who worked here. So people enter for the tour through the servants' entrances, and the vast majority of the tour takes place in those parts of the house. We go into one of the servants' bedrooms upstairs, which by coincidence happens to be Mattie's bedroom. And there you'll see Mattie's family pictures on display and really get a sense of what it was like to not only work in the house, but to live here.
Yes, it's so funny somebody asked about noodles because the column was about noodles 2 months ago. And we've done some really interesting things. Mrs. Glessner kept her menus. And so if I want to know what was served roughly around St. Patrick's Day in 1902, I can look it up and find it. And it's astonishing. This particular menu, believe it or not, was the 10th of April, 1893. How close did we come? Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Yes, it was a Monday, but it was the 10th of April in 1893, and it was a very, very exciting time in Chicago history because the fair was just getting ready to open. Because some of you may know it opened in May. And it was right over there, so it was very close. And Mrs. Glessner and Mr. Glessner were both very, backers of the fair, encouragers of the fair. And when you go to the Mattie columns, they don't each individually have a hyperlink, which is really nice the way that's done. It's just one link. So if you see this month's, you can scroll backwards all the way to April of 2020. For the first until August of 2020, we did them every week. And they kept me from losing my mind any worse than I already have during the beginning of COVID. And then in August, we went to once a month. But you can scroll back through all of them. And the brown bread recipe, which is really Mattie's recipe, that we actually have the recipe in her handwriting, it's the very first recipe that was published. And she did win awards for her bread. I wasn't making that part up. She really did. And it's darn good bread too. It's really good. So I hope that you will all make it and enjoy it because it's a very good recipe.
That's awesome. We got a question in the chat here from Laura. Is everything based on those menus from Mrs. Glessner, or do you pull in details from other sources?
Well, Mrs. Glessner's menus give us this jumping off point, but obviously Mrs. Glessner's menus don't have the recipes in them, although Mrs. Glessner did keep a recipe book. The recipe book that we have from Mrs. Glessner is not from the time period, 1892 to 1912, that Mattie was cooking here. But Mrs. Glessner has 4 shelves, probably 13, 14 linear feet of cookbooks in the Glessner House collection. And then I personally have a lot of cookbooks. The world is going to tilt off its axis from the weight of all the cookbooks that are stored on my back stairway. So I use my historic cookbooks from the time period, and I don't make something for an event or for the column unless I have found it in 3 places. So I can prove that people really made it. It's not enough to just find one instance of a recipe. I want to know for sure that it's something that people really cooked. So I need to find 3 instances of a similar recipe with similar ingredients, similar techniques, similar quantities, and then I'm really sure that real cooks actually cooked that. And then it makes it into the show if I can prove that it was, just having, one newspaper clipping from, a newspaper that says that, this was a popular recipe. That doesn't do it for me. I'm pretty picky that way.
Love that. And I don't know if everybody noticed in there, the recipe list that we sent out, that Ellie included the picture of Mattie's handwritten recipe for the brown bread, which is really interesting to see because it is like one flowing sort of sentence.
Right, it's just a narrative account of how to make bread, and there's real instructions, and
yeah,
that's why the 1, 2, 3, 4 cake is so nice, because I'm sure, and you will find the 1, 2, 3, 4 cake in many 19th century and early 20th century cookbooks, And I am absolutely positive that the 1, 2, 3, 4 cake is the sort of thing that a woman who took a job as a woman of all work, you know, like the only staff member at a house, or a very young housewife who was doing her own cooking. Boy, that 1, 2, 3, 4 cake was just going to come out all the time because it was so easy. You don't have to have a recipe written down. It's all made in one bowl, and it's a pound cake, and it's really tasty. It's not a bad cake at all, especially if you remember to put vanilla in it.
Yes. And the reason we have the brown bread recipe, now, of course, Mattie was with us for 20 years, and then she retired at the age of 50 to get married. And it appears that Mrs. Glessner, of course, having had the same cook for so many years, gathered together quite a number of recipes from Mattie before she left. And so we have her handwritten cookbook, and that's where she identifies several of these recipes specifically as being from Mattie, recipes that she developed. And so that picture you saw was right out of that handwritten cookbook.
Cool. Well, I know we're running close on time here. I just wanted to make a mention that something you said when we were planning today's program, that this is the first time you've really done a program virtually like this, where you're in the kitchen cooking and live virtually for people to see. So I just want to let folks know who were on today. You got to see something unique and special from Glessner House, from Bill and Ellie today. And I want to thank you both for being open to this and organizing the program. And Ellie, terrific. Love to watch. It was so much fun to watch you just navigating this tiny kitchen space, you know. Plus, I think we can all relate to the long to-do list that Mattie has for this one event. I'm sure we all are facing those same lists this week and the work that we've got going on. So I hope everybody enjoyed this Monday afternoon kind of break from things, and that if you haven't made your cheese spread or cake or the other recipes yet, that you do it, and let us know what you think. Send pictures.
Oh, I forgot to put the horseradish into the cheese spread when I was making it. It's right here. I forgot to put it in. But you want to use, for the horseradish, you want to use just grated horseradish, not prepared horseradish, because prepared horseradish won't be strong enough. You want to actually have just grated horseradish. And Jennifer Van Haften, do you remember when we thought it was a great idea to try to make our own horseradish at Opening Heritage Farm?
Yeah.
And we almost died. I cried for probably 3 days. Tear gas has got nothing on making your own. We grew the horseradish. The horseradish is beautiful, came right out of the ground. We thought we'd be real smart and make our own horseradish. Never again. I let the nice people grate it and however they do it, and put it in little jars, and I pay money for it. I will never again try to make it, but we nearly killed each other and ourselves trying to do that. It's very strong stuff, but you want to use that instead of prepared horseradish that people would put on a steak in a steakhouse. You don't want that. You want the grated horseradish. So if that helps.
Good to know. Well, thank you again. I am going to ask Bill and Ellie and Sarah if you could stay on for a minute or so after everybody leaves. I just want to kind of grab a screen catcher, I think. And thanks everybody again for coming. Enjoy the rest of your week and your spring. Hope to see you at our next final two sessions in this Museum Worker Wellbeing series. Thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellie.
Bye-bye.